So I am at an outreach event this week, and if our dear listeners do not know, I'm currently working in the health field. I'm not going to go into too much detail where I work, but I'm currently working as a prep navigator. So, and if you have any questions on that, reach out to me, and I'll get you all the resources that you need. But I'm working in Phoenix right now, so I'm doing outreach event. I'm at the Westward Ho, which, if you don't know, is this like old hotel that was built in the 1920s, and they converted it since then into low-income housing, like Section 8 housing. So this guy comes up, and right away he's like, "Oh, you work for this company? Is that druggie company?" And I kind of contort my face, and I'm like, "Yeah, like I guess we were kind of known for that about 20 years ago, but we've like expanded and we've opened up into like behavioral health care and primary care visits as well." And he looks over and he's like, "Behavioral health, that's like mental health, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah. And we can set you up with appointments." And he's like, you know the only person that ever found a cure for depression and anxiety?" And I'm looking over at my coworkers and I'm like, who the hell is he about to say? Like, he's about to say some nonsense. And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Adolf Hitler." Looks us all dead in the eye waiting for a reaction. I was like, so he, we just, make polite conversation because, we all have our badges on. We're all representing our company. But right away as he walks away, I turn to my coworker and I say, "We just met a Nazi, didn't we?"
Look, I'm going to start a company. It's going to be a for-profit company. I don't know what they're going to do, but there will be a firm punch every Nazi you see policy on the books. And everyone will be a manager. So you can't be like, "You just punched me. I want to speak to your manager." Welcome back to Why Won't No One Date
This guy.
This guy.
This guy.
I'm Dick Biggington.
And I'm Big Booba.
Fiona Booba. And we discuss only the farthest right conspiracy theories and dating strategies that we've gleaned from 15 minutes of internet research. This week, we're drinking soda because soda has high in testosterone and good for the pubis. Naomi, what are we drinking today?
We are drinking peppermint candy cane soda, refreshing flavor, handcrafted in small batches, sweetened by pure cane sugar. Notice how it doesn't have a brand. It just
says peppermint. Interesting.
Yeah. Okay, cheers. Yeah, it just tastes like a liquid candy cane.
It does taste like a liquid candy cane. If that yums your yum,
it'd be really good around Christmas. It tastes like a Thin Mint.
It does taste like a Thin Mint. This would be good in a traditional Christmas cocktail.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what else you'd pair with it, but it would be very tasty as like a holiday beverage at a Christmas party. Yeah, it's not really the time of year for it, but I'll give it props. It's doing what it set out to achieve. Naomi, what did we talk about in our book, Myron Gaines? I keep trying to say Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man. It's Why Women Deserve Less by Myron Gaines / Aaron whoever.
So in the first episode, we talked about why this book sucks and why this book deserves less. Buys on Amazon. No, so we talked about Myron Gaines, where he came from, where he's going, how he didn't actually write this book. We talked about how shitty this book is, and how the first chapter is just a really long quote, no explanation, from another book that also sucks. And then in the second chapter, they still don't get to the main point of the book. And if you want to learn more about why I am Fiona Booba and Joel is Dick Biggington, go and listen to the first episode.
I think whenever we review like super misogynistic texts, those should be like the names we adopt.
For sure.
Or we should start a parody right-wing podcast where we just shill like ox sperm sacs for hairline improvement.
But what we gotta do, instead of having like our cartoons, we should have like a very like right-wing version of our cartoons. So like instead of me wearing the SCOTUS shirt, I'll wear like a pro right-wing shirt.
You'll have like just a big face of like Clarence Thomas.
Yeah. And like you'll have a bald head with the same beard. no glasses.
This is a good bit.
Yeah.
I like this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't know if our artist who did our previous work is going to be like,
No.
yeah, I feel comfortable doing this.
For sure no.
Yeah, I also want to point out that pretty much everything he said regarding history or anthropology or society was completely wrong. But that hasn't stopped him, and it will not stop him moving forward.
Nope.
But with that set up, thank you, Naomi. Let's get to chapter 3, The Old Contract, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Just Make Up Bullshit That Fits My Narrative. Naomi, The Old Contract was nothing sexy or exciting. It was boring. Despite all the flowers, white wedding dresses, cringe romantic comedies and love songs, it boiled down to men provided resources and protection, women provided sex, and, if wanted, children. The new contract is a lot more complex, as it may sound good on paper, but doesn't work in practice. Like communism.
What?
It boils down to, I don't need a man. Men are trash. Down with the patriarchy. Believe all women. You get the idea. Good
I'm
intro,
just
huh?
like so confused on how like that went to like the extreme of like communism. Like I'm just so confused.
Well, it may sound good on paper, but doesn't work in practice.
Yeah,
like
but
communism.
But it's like we're not talking about like political structures. We're talking about like the dynamic between men and women. I guess that is a political structure these days.
Oh boy, that's an interesting point. I'll mention this. So I listened to a podcast done by one of the creators of The Dollop called The Audit, where they review like horrible media content and discuss all the reasons it's wrong. And they had an episode, I believe this week, called About Those Evil Communists, which was reviewing all of the PragerU videos about communism and why they're wrong. And they have Richard Wolff on. Richard Wolff is this like prominent intellectual. I believe he defines himself as a communist who is able to defend like the basic idea of helping out other people in very like clear intellectual terms, who just eviscerates them. So if you want to learn more about that and laugh along, it's the Audits episode, season 3, episode 5. But back to this. First, this whole thing is insanely Western centric. Right? Like, he's pretending he's discovered some universal truths, but he's betraying the fact he only knows about modern Western wedding traditions. So, here's an example of some stuff that, like, other cultures do that we don't normally practice in the West. Brides.com had an article from January of 2022 written by Nancy Mattia and Andrea Park. They give 43 fascinating wedding traditions from around the world. I don't know how interesting all of these are, but I think they illustrate my point. In Norway, for instance, brides wear crowns to deflect evil spirits. In Mexico, they have such a thing known as a wedding lasso. A Mexican couple is exchanging their vows and put a lasso made of rosary beads and flowers draped around their shoulders in the shape of a figure 8. Not only does el lasso represent the union of the couple, but the shape also represents the infinity signal. In Armenia, they balance bread. Newly married Armenian couples put lavash flatbread on their shoulders as they enter the wedding reception.
Love a good
bread. They then also break a plate for good luck. In Congo, you can't smile on your wedding day. During the entire wedding day, from ceremony to reception, the two are not allowed to smile.
Why is
If
that?
they do, it would mean they aren't serious about the marriage.
I'm just so giggly. I can't take my marriage seriously.
Yeah. In China, some people have a bow and arrow at their wedding. A prospective husband will shoot his bride with a bow and headless arrow several times, and then collects the arrows and breaks them during the ceremony to ensure their love lasts forever. In Fiji, you present a whale's tooth to your significant other.
Just one?
In Scotland, you can elope. Okay, that's not even a tradition. I don't know why they included that. In Greece, you have to shave the broom. Shave the groom. So the groomsman literally on the wedding day becomes his barber and shaves his pal's face. And then after he's freshly shaved, his new mother-in-law will feed him honey and almonds. Guatemala. I'm sorry, I had my wisdom teeth removed yesterday. You break a bell. In Lebanon, you have music and dancing before the ceremony. And you actually end up at the bride's house where you shower people with blessings and flower petals before they leave for the ceremony. In Norway, you have something called the kransekake, made with iced almond cake rings to form a cone shape, and you put a wine bottle in its center. In the Czech Republic, you place a baby on the couple's bed to enhance their fertility.
What if there's no baby?
In Russia, you have a wedding sweetbread called karave, which is meant to symbolize prosperity. In India, something called juta chupai, where an Indian's bride's mischievous sisters and female cousins make up make off with the groom's shoes and demand ransom money for the safe return. In China, you have wedding door games. In Niger, you have something known as the camel dance. In Philippines, you release white doves. In Cuba, you have the money dance, where men can dance with the bride and pay money by pinning it to her dress to help them pay for the wedding. In Russia, people often take wedding photos near the tomb of the unknown soldier. This goes on and on. The point I'm trying to make is there's a hell of a lot of wedding traditions out there. It is not just, here comes the bride in a white wedding dress. Like, he has no idea about how other cultures celebrate weddings. So this whole idea, like, that's how it's always been, and the new contract is upending that, wrong from the get. But second, many cultures have a tradition of a dowry, the concept of paying the groom money or resources to take the woman. So husbands are not the only ones contributing resources to the marriage. He's saying the agreement was men provided resources, women provide sex? No, both people often contribute resources, buddy. This isn't universally true, but some cultures also allow the woman to get her money back if they divorced. So it's clear that the money was still effectively her contribution, not suddenly the sole property of the man. Also, unless you were the highest of classes, women still needed to do stuff around the house, like caring for children, preparing food, minding a garden, cleaning clothes, basic division of labor stuff. To pretend that women are not contributing anything other than sex or children to a marriage is pretty sexist.
Okay, but can we just admit that sex and children are both heavy contributions to a marriage?
No, I agree with that. But he's saying the equation is men do all the work, women do like the baby adding offspring element, and that's just wrong. It's a really bad formulation of what relationships look like. Now, it's pretty sexist just to say that, but Aaron and Myron don't seem to believe women do anything besides having sex with randoms on the street and pose on OnlyFans, so I'm not pretending that they're particularly educated on this topic.
Fair.
Third, and this is interesting, the traditions he cites with regards to wedding dresses and doves and music and all that are relatively new and not part of some genetically encoded imperative. So one example is white wedding dresses haven't been a thing for more than 500 years, arguably only becoming super popular after Queen Victoria wore a white lace dress at her 1840 wedding to Prince Albert.
Prince Albert.
So royal brides before Victoria did not typically wear white, per Wikipedia. Instead, choosing heavily brocaded gowns embroidered with white and silver thread, with red being a particularly popular color in Western Europe. During this time, European and American brides wore a plethora of colors, including blue, yellow, and practical colors like black, brown, or gray. As accounts of Victoria's wedding spread across the Atlantic and throughout Europe, fashionable people followed her lead. Because of the limitations of laundering techniques before the later part of the 20th century, white dresses provided an opportunity for conspicuous consumption. They were favored primarily as a way to show the world that the bride's family was so wealthy and so firmly part of the leisure class that the bride would choose an elaborate dress that could be ruined by any sort of work or spill. Which is interesting because we adopt the same thing today, and the inconvenience is considered like part of the whatever.
Yeah.
The point here is, he says the old contract was white wedding dresses, cringe romantic comedies, love songs, blah, blah, blah. But like, white wedding dresses have not been around for 200,000 years. They have not been around for 6,000 years, which is actually human civilization. They are something that is not even 200 years old, yet he's pretending this is part of like our genetic legacy handed down from our ancestors. Hey, if you didn't listen to our episode 1, the reason I keep saying that is because he says that we've like existed for 200,000 years doing the exact same thing, so it's crazy that we're varying from it now. And we have not had romantic comedies when we were in caves drawing pictures of cattle on the walls. I'm reasonably confident of that. To call this an old biologically derived contract is stupid, because these things have only been traditions for 200,000 years. One book that I would recommend that I think some people might find really interesting is a book called The Invention of Tradition. I didn't read all of it recently because some of it gets like super technical, but the basic argument the authors have is like most traditions we associate with different societies around the world were created in the last 200 years. Like, so many things we consider integral to their cultures are things that have been manufactured by like authors and the media and don't really have a basis in the historic past. Things like kilts or English royalty ceremonies or the way Indian people dress. Like, these are all things that have been manufactured like wholesale in order to like draw more tourism or build like a distinct cultural identity. Really interesting stuff. I thought it was a little dry, but like the detail the author goes into is really cool. Fourth, with regards to the contract, this seems like a pretty shitty contract if it's true. like, even assuming women were not being coerced into sex or children in societies where they had no rights, like spousal rape was not outlawed in the United States until 1993. Till 1976, every U.S. state had a marital exception to rape laws. The chance they would die in childbirth is still pretty effing high. Like, the only way you would think this is a good arrangement, men give resource, women give baby, is if, like, women were being chained outside to die if they couldn't get married, or if you didn't believe women deserve the same autonomy and freedom as their male counterparts, right? Like, women being forced to have kids in order to survive in a society is not a great option. Yeah. I should note, too, according to Our World in Data, since the 1750s, the maternal mortality rate has dropped from 1,000 deaths per 100,000 births, a 1% rate, to as low as 3 deaths per 100,000 births, a 0.003% rate.
But the United States still has the highest mortality rate in all developed countries.
We're number one. Okay, so there's been a significant drop in the maternal mortality rate.
Yes.
Which you would think would make women more likely to accept the contract because the terms have been getting better and better over time. But they're still pretty high, all things considering. And it's really strange that women went in the opposite directions. Maybe that just disproves this whole assertion. When you do a comparison, Naomi, you should use 2 things that have commonalities, so the difference between them seems obvious, like apples and oranges, both fruits but with different compositions, textures, flavors, colors, whatever. If you're comparing contracts, you compare what each side is getting, like this contract will give up 10% of your company in exchange for $500,000, and this will give up 7% for $250,000,
yes.
Right?
I feel like we're on Shark Tank right now.
Sure. So he gives this setup of the old contract and the new contract. The old contract is what men and women both get out of a relationship in his mind. The second is nothing. It's just what women think. Like, he goes, the old contract is men provide resources, women provide sex. The new contract is I don't need a man, men are trash, believe all women. Right? That's not a contract. Do you understand what I'm saying there?
Yeah.
It's just what he thinks women think. Like, A, it's concerning he can't even define what he thinks the issue is with the new way we think about modern dating. But B, he can't even tell us what women are getting out of this, let alone men. Is he saying that the average woman in the modern era doesn't want any relationship with any man at all? This is just incels screeching about, like, feminism having gone too far, not an actual argument. Also, this obviously doesn't sound good on paper for him, so why would he say it sounds good on paper? Sorry, the contract doesn't sound good on paper. Why would he say it sounds good on paper if he's saying it's bad, right?
Yeah.
He's like, the new contract sounds good on paper. To whom? Even under his own, like, logic, it doesn't make any sense. The only reason I can think of that he included this was because he wants to, like, slip in the fact that communism sucks. I can't think of another reason to formulate it like that.
I'm just imagining the outline that this ghostwriter went on, which was like, it was like chapter 3, bring up the new contract, bring up how it differs from the old contract. Also, communism sucks.
Well,
A, B, C.
Remember what I said in part 1, where it's like, this is this like incel screeching. It's not a particularly well put together argument, but if it is a decently put together argument where, like, some thought has gone into it, it's mostly meant to draw people into right-wing circles.
Yeah.
Right? And there's this great marriage of conservative thoughts and being misogynistic to women. Because in the same way that, like, capitalism is good and we need to endorse big business, you might also attract similar people to the idea that women deserve less rights. Yeah. We'll get into this later, but he's like, oh, the welfare state is destroying America. If only everyone worked for themselves rather than leeching off the teat of government.
And right after, that was like 2 or 3 sentences right after, it's like, women suck, end of chapter.
Yeah, the end. Yeah, so he's literally just including that to say communism sucks, which is great that he's standing up for his convictions, but seriously, you have 86 pages, guy. Like, fill it with something else. So back to what he has to say. Though void and technically no longer in effect, it pays to review the old contract men and women had with each other for several reasons. You with me?
Yes.
First, it's human nature, Naomi. No matter how much women hate the past or feminists detest tradition, there is no denying that men and women evolved over thousands of years, 200,000 years, to interact with each other in a certain way. These biological realities are reflected in the old contract, and no matter how much women would wish otherwise, they are inescapable. Indeed, times have changed. Indeed, feminism has burned the old contract. However, political fads cannot undo 200,000 years of evolutionary hardwiring that all men and women have. To deny the old contract is to ignorantly deny human nature. ignorantly.
Mm.
Okay, we've touched on this already, but I don't think I've made a big enough deal about how stupid this all is, right? Like, the only thing evolution does is, like, push forward species that are able to reproduce really efficiently. Like, sometimes evolution will push forward species that are better adapted and living in a specific environment, but often it'll also push forward species that like have no natural predators or have like super inefficient means of reproduction, but because they reproduce so much, it doesn't matter that it's inefficient because they're just getting more and more babies out the door. Like, evolution does not have like some grand plan. Evolution is not like the invisible hand of the free market or God, like pushing us in a specific direction. It's this completely random process, and whatever comes of the result, like, isn't necessarily the most efficient way to do things. It's just the thing that's lasted the longest. So he's pretending that, like, if something has survived 200,000 years, it's the most efficient way to do things. That's not how evolution works, guy. You're such an idiot. But even if there's a little misogynist living in your brain telling you to do these things, there's still not a good argument for doing that, because that's the appeal to nature fallacy. Thinking that because something is natural, it's good, and because it's unnatural, it's bad. Dogs naturally tend to eat their own poop. Hamsters naturally tend to eat some of their young. Chickens naturally tend to peck at their eggshells and break them open if they get bored. Monkeys like gang rape. Saying something is what we're programmed to do by nature does nothing to examine the morality of a given action, nor does it even imply the setup he's describing of. Man hunter, woman gardener. That's not the setup of monkey groups. And even if it did in our modern world, where we're not hunting live game for every meal, meaning a woman can go out and work an office job while a man can stay at home and everyone is cared for and you can raise a family like he wants. See, even if we're programmed to want to do certain things, we still have brains that allow us to ignore these impulses. Like if it's hot out, your body wants to go seek shade and find water, but your brain can ignore those perfectly reasonable impulses and keep walking on your hike. That's what being conscious is. That's what being a person is. To make these assertions is to ignorantly, if I can borrow a phrase, deny the nature of consciousness and being. You with me so far?
Yes.
I hate how the book's so makes me ignorant. Second, not everyone is entirely on board with the new contract, Naomi, which will be described in detail in the next chapter.
Why do people do that? Why are people like, oh, in this book we explore. Oh, in the next chapter we'll talk about this. Just talk about it right then and there and move on.
Because you add another line if you can say in the next chapter we'll do this.
Oh yeah,
which gets them closer to his 86-page count. Some people reject the new contract and insist on adhering to tradition. Examples include women who wish to be stay-at-home moms, religious people, etc. That's 2 types of people. I think there's probably more. I know why he's putting religion in, but why is he putting that in?
Because you've just talked about how he's trying to appeal to the right-wing media.
Oh, okay, yeah. Like, I know why he's putting it in, but it doesn't really help his argument unless you're looking at it from that perspective. How does painting people who are religious as the platonic ideal of a perfect relationship help his argument? Like, atheists can live in a man work, woman stay put arrangement, and they would achieve the exact same outcome of happiness per his, like, description, right?
Yeah.
They're following the right biological imperatives, right? Like, he's trying to make the argument that religion is important because that feeds the desires of the people reading the book and allows them to reach like a larger audience. But it also undermines his argument if he's like, the old contract was simple, but then is like, well, it's man, resources, women, sex, religion, stable job, 2-parent household, 2 cars, you have to live in a suburb. Like you can't claim that the old contract was simple if you're going to add all these addendums that kind of defeat the whole purpose.
Yeah.
Second, a lot of people weren't on board with the old contract, Naomi. A lot of people still aren't.
What?
Domestic abuse and assault has been a problem throughout human history.
Still is.
Yeah. A lot of people are unhappy with the situation, given the divorce rate. Like, if this was the biological secret to keeping women was being in a one-man, one-woman, band, job, woman, breed, like, setup, you'd think the divorce rate would be a lot lower. One thing that I thought was interesting is I was just reading a book, I think it was called America's Women, and it was kind of tracing the role of women in American society throughout like the last 400 years. And one of the things it points out is when women started going to colleges, a lot of women then didn't get married. They went and they opened clinics with female partners, and they seemed to have a pretty good time. Some of them were lesbians. Some of them probably just friends with those women. But there's a lot of writing from women during that period who were like, it is very strange that society tells us we can only be happy with a man, for I am perfectly content with my Susanna, or whatever.
This is actually explored in the modern day when in this book called Half the Sky, which is based out of like different cultures around the world where women are not sent to school, they're sent to marry when they start menstruating. And so the vast majority of women or like young girls that go to school and finish past second or third grade feel more empowered, and they actually seek out their education instead of seeking out marriage. And so they have found that the longer that women are in school, the more empowered they become, the more likely they are to go out and like break these generational curses and not just die in childbirth or get their labia cut off or all those different things. And in no means am I judging different cultures. That's not my place. That's not something that I want to do. But at the same time, there has to be a certain point where you're given that autonomy. You're given that right to seek out different experiences instead of just doing the social norm in your tribe.
Yeah.
So the point that I'm trying to make is that you should read this book. It's great. It's called Half the Sky. I read it
Not this book, the one we're talking about.
No, you should read Half the Sky and understand that the more empowerment that we give to women, the more likely that society will run a little bit smoother.
Oh, I wouldn't go that far. I endorsed everything up until what you just said. Jeez, how dare you? Okay, so a lot of people have been unhappy with the arrangement in the past. Read pretty much any queer history book and you'll come up with a lot of examples of people who were gay who weren't happy with this arrangement. I don't think it disproves his entire assertion just to say, 5% of the population is queer, but it gives you something to think about if there are other people who might be happy who are heterosexual in non-heterosexual relationships or just not getting married. Food for thought.
I do have to say, though, to finish out this point about divorce rates, there was a recent study that came out, I think we talked about in the last couple episodes, that was, it came out and talked about how 70% of divorces are initiated by women these days.
We'll get to that later in the text. Yeah.
Okay. Did you just poll with the book polls? We'll get to that later.
Yeah, but, okay, fair point. Should I talk about it now?
No, we'll talk about it later.
Okay, let's bring up the other fact, which is the old contract was very simple. Men, resources, protection, women, sex. Yeah, if it's that simple, it would seem that a lot of men are not upholding their part of the contract, the whole protection component.
Yeah.
So let's talk about domestic violence for a moment. And I want to
share everyone, this is your trigger warning.
Depressing stats. Skip ahead maybe 5 minutes if you're not a big fan of this. So this is from the NCADV, the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. These are, I don't know when these are last updated. I think it was 2019 or 2020, but they have a statistics page about the nature of domestic violence. On average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. During 1 year, this equates to more than 10 million women and men. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men experience severe intimate partner physical violence, intimate partner contact sexual violence, and or intimate partner stalking with impacts such as injury, fearfulness, PTSD, use of victim services, contraction of sexually transmitted diseases, etc. You can use etc. there because you've given multiple things, not just 2 items.
Yeah.
1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. This includes a range of behaviors such as slapping, shoving, pushing, and in some cases might not be considered domestic violence. 1 in 7 women and 1 in 25 men have been injured by an intimate partner. 1 in 10 women have been raped by an intimate partner. Data is unavailable on male victims. It's there, but because we don't keep consistent records, it's harder to talk about the entire United States. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men have been victims of severe physical violence, such as beating, burning, and strangling by an intimate partner in their lifetime. 1 in 7 women and 1 in 18 men have been stalked by an intimate partner during their lifetime, to the point in which they feel very fearful or believe that they or someone close to them would be harmed or killed. Oh, and young women between the ages of 18 and 24 are the ones most likely to be abused by a partner. So the hot girls people like him are pursuing, the ones he talks about in Chapter 1, are the ones they're also most likely to abuse. I want to point out that I recognize that male abuse is a thing. I recognize there are relationships in which there are male victims of domestic violence. But the point he tries to make here is that men always uphold the contract and there's nothing wrong with continuing the tradition. When in fact, 25% of women experience symptoms like these, problems like these, meaning at least 1/4, if not more, because domestic violence is underreported, have a problem with the contract.
I would go even further, and I'm not trying to discredit domestic violence. I would also say that the protection goes to the home as well as other factors of life. And so if you come home and you're not feeling protected in your feelings as well in any type of abuse, it's the same situation.
Yeah, totally fair. Unfortunately, his answer to this is probably just that women aren't people. So let's move on. Some accept parts of the new contract, but still hold on to some of the old. Examples include feminists who want you to pay for a date, career women who leave the workforce to raise their kids, men who will commit but not marry, etc. I have to say, it is true that feminists never pay for dates. That's why if two people who identify as feminists go on dates, they're unable to pay and have to dine and dash.
Oh my God.
It's impossible for either of them to break the biological imperative of being kept people.
That is such an issue in the industry, in the service industry, specifically restaurants, is the amount of like women that dine and dash.
Yeah, and it's why I'm not a feminist, because I have paid for dinner on multiple occasions.
Oh my God.
Lauren.
Wow.
You would imagine that I would be unable to if I was a feminist. And so I'm glad we've established that I'm a misogynist. Also, I don't really understand why marriage is so important. To that point about religion earlier, like, if you want your state to be a white Christo-fascist state, just say that. Like, people living in a long-term relationship but who aren't married could just as easily fulfill the biological imperative he lays out. But he hates the idea of atheists or like non-religious people being happy, so he has to specify married people are the ones who are happy.
Yeah.
So again, the old contract is not men providing resources, women providing sex. It's men providing resources, men providing protection, men being religious and going to church, people getting married and tie of commitment. It's much more complicated than he makes it out to be. Moving on, some people, Naomi, fully accept the new contract. Examples include feminists with purple hair, people that identify as one of the 3,976,243 genders, androgynous men who are open to open relationships, parents okay with outsourcing their children to the state, etc.
Wait, what does that mean, outsourcing their children? Is that like a liberal arts education?
It's kind of like when you outsource jobs, like overseas.
Yeah.
Instead of getting a good quality product that's like made in the household, you get an inferior product from, the government teaching your kids to like share their cookies at snack time and that gay people exist.
Why is it always that people go straight to the extreme of feminists with purple hair? Why can't feminists just have regular colored hair? Like
Again,
natural colored
he's
hair?
saying the old contract is so much more because it's like women have to provide sex and, if wanted, children, but also they can't dye their hair. Also, they can't have tattoos or nose rings or any of the other things.
Why are you just calling me out really hard right now?
Oh my God, Naomi's going to get purple hair. Our next logo is going to have Naomi with purple hair. It's going to be great. Yeah, so why would feminists with purple hair not be able to fulfill the old contract? Having purple hair does not make you less nurturing. It also seems like a lot of men are into that, so they will be able to provide the sex part of the arrangement. Appealing to men, per him.
He keeps saying, and you keep saying this over and over again and quoting this part, he's like, oh, women provide sex and children if wanted. Do you know how many children are unwanted? It's not like we're whales where we can just trapdoor our vagina.
It's worse. He's saying women, if they want to have children, will provide children in a relationship. I don't think that's true. I think most men can force women into
rape?
Yeah. But I think also like a lot of couples are like, I think we're good with kids. And then the man is like, but we've had 3 daughters. I want an heir. I want someone who can hold my sword. I want to be able to polish my guns with a companion at my side.
The companion.
Yeah, like, it's all bad. Like, I don't want to dig too much into the basic idea that men provide resources and women provide sex, but, like, it's pretty coercive at its core, right? Like, we can understand that, like, it's pretty bad if you're saying, well, women should give men sex, like a bird feeder or like a vending machine. You put in resources, you get sex out. That's not a great formulation. It certainly seems that you're being forced into something. Notice he also doesn't mention anything about gender identity, relationship arrangements, or public education under his definition of the old contract. He claims the secret is a simple formula of resources and protection, but actually there's like 50 steps total, because if he revealed them up front, he would reveal the fact he's a hidden agenda, but he waits until you're halfway through and you're like, yeah, women shouldn't have purple hair. They should just be sex machines I put resources into. I give you hot Cheetos, you give me...
I don't understand this obsession with hair color. Why does hair color have to be identifier? Like, what is the difference between a person with regular, like, natural coloring hair versus purple hair?
Because
like,
feminists are the ones who hate all men, believe all women. Again, the point I was trying to make earlier about comparing like-minded things is really important here. Because we still don't really know what the quote-unquote new contract is. He still has not really articulated. We know it's different than the old contract.
Do you know where we're probably going to find out about the new contract?
50.
Yeah, in his 8th book.
His 8th book. No, that's a good one. Yeah. He follows this. Hell, a lot of people don't know in the process of figuring out where they stand for themselves. The point is we're at a transitioning period where a significant percentage of the population either wholly or partially subscribes to the old contract, rendering it valid.
But what is the new contract?
Oh, that doesn't matter. Yeah, so this is tyranny of the majority. This is where, 50.00001% of the population believes something, and he claims this impacts everyone. It's interesting that you could imagine a world in which there were people who believed in the old contract and then people who believed in non-traditional arrangements living side by side in harmony, but because he's a fascist, right-wing douchebag, he can't imagine a world in which people have choices and you respect them. But what's really interesting, Naomi, is what actual polling says about the importance of marriage to everyday people.
Tell me.
Pew Pew. It's Pew Research, Naomi. Pew Research has studied the importance of marriage before, and in February of 2020, on Valentine's Day no less, put out a article saying that more than half of Americans say marriage is important, but not essential to leading a fulfilling life. Fewer than 1 in 5 U.S. adults say being married is essential for a man or woman to live a fulfilling life, according to a survey conducted in summer of 2019. So 80% of people, the majority of people, do not believe you need to get married. The old contract has been voided, Naomi.
I'm wondering so hard if this data has changed at all since the pandemic, just because we talked a lot about how a lot of people are straying away from hookup culture and are wanting more serious relationships. Like, I'm wondering if that varies into marriage statistics or if it's just like long-term commitment.
I would say, I'll wait for the data to come out. Okay. But my speculation would be that more people might want to get married post-pandemic, but a lot of people have also realized that while they might be happy with a partner, there's a lot of issues with being married that led them going crazy during, like, being stuck during lockdowns or whatever. Back to Pew, similar shares of adults say that marriage is essential for women and men to live fulfilling lives. 17% women, 16% men. A much larger share of Americans, 54%, say being married is important but not essential to lead fulfilling lives. About 3 in 10 say marriage is not important in this respect. The public places somewhat more importance on being in a committed romantic relationship than being married. So again, to my point that you could be together but not married would fulfill the terms of the contract, he's specifying marriage even though most people think otherwise.
Yeah.
About 1 in 4 adults, 26%, say being in such a relationship is essential for men to lead fulfilling lives, and 30% say the same about women. Again, though, much larger shares say this is important but not essential for men, 59%, and women, 57%. Fewer people see this as not important. So what do Americans consider more important to leading a fulfilling life than marriage and being in a committed relationship? What do you think, Naomi?
I know the answer because I already looked at the outline. I'm sorry, but I kind of was going to guess that at the same time. I'm going to say money.
Okay, fair enough. Pew says career enjoyment. Okay. A majority, 57%, say having a job or career they enjoy is essential for men to lead a fulfilling life. 46% say the same about women. When asked how important it is for men and women to have a lot of money, 20% say this is essential for men, and 15% say the same about women. But somewhat higher shares say money is important, though not essential to fulfillment, then say the same about marriage. When it comes to having children, 16% say this is essential for men to live a fulfilling life, and 22% say it's essential for women.
Okay, let me rephrase that. I'm not saying money as in, like, you're a millionaire and you have a really nice house. I'm saying you can live and not have to worry about money.
Right.
Which is millionaire now.
Unfortunately. So I think we need to take a new vote, Naomi.
Okay.
We need to ratify a new contract.
Okay.
It's just like unionization, where like all the people like protest outside the Fresh and Fit podcast headquarters and are like, down with old contract, up with new. So he gives a couple of points. He says some transphobic stuff for number 3. All trans people have their biological imperatives, even if they look different. That's what he says. So that's why, trans men are never able to marry cis women and trans women are never able to marry cis men. Or gasp why same-sex couples have never worked out in the entire history of time. He is very silent on the concept of same-sex couples. And I wonder if this is part of the right-wing attempt to portray all gay people as deviant and evil, which is picking up steam again. I mean, they really had a good go of it in the early 2000s, and it's coming back around. But there's this idea of like, well, even if you're attracted to women, it's still your biological imperative to reproduce and have sex with men. And that's a concerning thing to keep an eye on.
Hot.
4th, as women are confused today about their role in modern society, so are men. This is because the biological nature of the old contract runs contrary to the statutory nature of the new contract, explained in detail in the next chapter.
I swear to God if he says that one more time.
For example, men pursue the opposite sex traditionally, which is encouraged under the old contract. Where does it say that? Men resources, women sex. Why can't a woman approach a man and be like, you give me money, I give you sex? But such actions are frowned upon, discouraged, or even outright punished under the new contract. For example, it was perfectly all right to buy a girl flowers in the past, and she would naturally be inclined to enjoy them. But if not done under the precisely right circumstances and conditions today, such a move would likely label you creepy, desperate, or even a borderline stalker.
What?
Like Tom, Dick, and Harry, you think you are doing everything right, and you are, according to the old contract. But those right things are a complete violation of the new contract, resulting in confusion and guaranteed failure. Understanding this will help eliminate much of your confusion about women today. I mean, what's wrong with this?
I don't understand why he thinks that women aren't going to enjoy flowers, first of all. Second of all, the only reason why I would think that a man was buying me flowers and it was creepy is because I told him repeatedly to stop buying me flowers and he did not stop pursuing me. The next thing is, I don't think that that was the best example because that doesn't make any goddamn sense at all. And the vast majority of men that I've dated in the old contract ways liked when I made the first move and would prefer when a woman makes the first move.
Yeah, it's the same thing as the Oxford study from part 1.
Yeah.
Where it's like men are turned off, or actually both sexes are turned off by people they consider to be unapproachable, too attractive, and so it lessens the burden if someone else approaches you first.
Yeah.
I would say what's wrong with this is he kind of gives up the game and admits women get no say in who they date.
Yeah.
Any affection must be good because you're fulfilling the biological imperative. All men lives matter. An attack on one is an attack on us all. I'm sure women have had a clingy classmate who won't take a hint that they're not interested, the lecherous landlord who lets himself into your house at random, the creepy coworker who spends far too much time at your desk and lingers gaze on your neckline. I don't think Aaron or Myron would like someone hitting on their girlfriend, but under this assertion, all acts of love must be accepted in the spirit in which they were intended. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's saying, even if a woman's dating someone, they should still accept all romantic gestures because that's the biological imperative, which I think a lot of right-wing people wouldn't agree with. So I don't understand how this argument works. And some women may be asexual and some women may like women, but of course...
No. Their opinions don't matter.
Sure. Second thing. Much of Western history has been organized around preventing women from interacting with men of the opposite sex. Like, women needed to stay inside the house and not interact with strangers for fear of them being seduced into a life of scandal. The Dollop had a great episode about New York's first post office and how many people were opposed to women going down the street to check their mail because the idea of women going out in public without a specific errand was scandalous.
That is a specific errand. Check your mail.
A specific errand like picking up a new Bible at the Bible store. You know, something that's...
There's a Bible store? I didn't know about it. You didn't tell me about the new Bible store in town?
Where you get your rosary beads. So a lot of dating, as we've discussed in From Front Porch to the Back Seat, and was it Curious History of Dating, was done in controlled environments, too. So women's mothers dictated who, arriving at the front door, would be able to see their daughter. If they thought the daughter might be interested, they'd let them in. If not, they'd turn them away. right? So this idea that any man could approach a woman and give her flowers is wrong because women still had a lot of selection over who they saw. Even when women started living by themselves, we still had examples of like women in the 1910s buying little like parlors that they could entertain men in controlled environments.
Yeah.
This idea women wanted to be randomly approached by men on the street is flat out wrong. The daughters actually also like had a decent amount of sway in who was able to come in, as I mentioned. So in a very real historical sense, borderline stalkers have always been called out and excluded, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a reason there were chaperone dances for so long. It was to prevent women from getting unwanted, unwarranted contact with other people. Now, I get that a lot of these practices were reserved for the upper classes. Like, unfortunately, a lot of history books are focused around the records and documents we have, which indicate these practices. But those were also the things that were popularized and discussed in magazines and newspapers and books on dating in the era. Like, it seems like that would be something that trickled down to other people. I don't know exactly how poor people were approaching each other and like interacting, and if poor women lived by themselves during this era. I really can't talk intelligently about it, but neither can he because of a lack of comprehensive records. I would also say, and this came up recently, and I wanted to really put a note on this because race relations in the United States are getting more tense again. This statement that men could approach women and give them flowers and it would be received with favor is demonstrably untrue when it comes to religious or racial strife in the past. You have examples of people like Emmett Till. You know about Emmett Till, right? Emmett Till was a black teenager who was murdered in, I think, either the 1950s or 60s because he may have whistled at a white woman. It's unclear if that even happened. That's just like the claim that why he was murdered brutally was because he had whistled at her. The audacity, right? It seemed insane to suggest all men could approach any woman. Like, I don't know what ethnicity Myron comes from, but he is not a passing white person. He would not have had the same privileges of approaching any person that he thinks he would have had in this era. And he's longing for some sort of environment where, like, he wouldn't be able to do this thing that he claims everyone could do. He's painting this present situation as horrifying because women might spur a man's advances and hurt the feelings. But in reality, this is probably the most open time in history we've ever had in regards to flirting, where people from really any religious or racial background can flirt without being worried about their lives. Yes, not all women want to be approached randomly, and some may react negatively, but you will not be murdered for doing so. This is the best time in human history to be a man dating. Like, even the idea that, like, you might have a gay person approach you and, like, hit on you and you're not interested is something that's crazy. Like, there was a time in the past that could get you killed. Yeah. Right? That could get you beaten up. Yeah. He's so stupid. Like he has no historical sense of any kind. It's insane how little he's thought about this. He goes on. People may not like this emotionless, transactional view of men and women, but it doesn't make it any less accurate. The relationship between most men and women throughout all of history has been transactional. It's been prostitution. All men are Johns, all women are whores.
Woohoo!
I think that was the original title of the book.
I don't doubt it, honestly.
Why women deserve less? Because they're whores. Yeah. Given that so many relationships were prompted by families trying to get into good graces of other families, don't forget the role of pimps here. If we want to continue this analogy, like, not all women were working for themselves. They were being pimped out by their families, per his analogy. I'm reminded of our discussion of revolting prostitutes way back in, like, episode 12 of this podcast. The authors were like, we get that a lot of people engage in sex work and actually enjoy it, but you can't deny the role coercion plays in it. Yeah. Right? People do sex work, often not because they want to, but because they have no other choice that allows them to have flexible work-life balance and make a huge amount of money. It's a world in which it's marry or starve. So I don't know if we consider the old contract any better than slavery, right? Mm-hmm. If you have no choice in what you do, or you're going to be, like, shunned or have to cut your wrists in order to survive. I mean, yeah, if you didn't want to get married, you might have a very good chance you'd be lobotomized. Is that really what he's advocating? In a less fun way, he kind of sweeps under the rug the men who ignored all this and just assaulted the object of their affections in the past without providing them resources and protection. Let's go past 50 years and think about people like Genghis Khan and how he's the ancestor of so much of the world now. Like 16% of the world is... Genghis Khan was not giving women, like, a big cake and, like, protection. He was assaulting them, and that's why so much of the population is descended from them. There was also like mass rapes during all of our world wars, or the slave children of the South that were fathered by the masters. He uses the word contract and implies that men who don't follow the rules are bad, but if men are hardwired to seek out sex and reproduction, why wouldn't it be the right thing to do, per his logic, to skip the providing resources part and just jump immediately to procreation?
Mm-hmm.
Finally, he's a 30-year-old guy lusting after 18-year-olds, but wouldn't they be the most attracted to the oldest people in our society, per his logic, those who have accumulated the most resources compared to a 20-something out of school? Right? He's saying the contract is men provide resources, women provide sex, so why wouldn't the youngest, most attractive women go after the oldest men with the most resources? That's how it should work, according to him.
Didn't you say recently in a podcast that like women are most attracted to people their own age and men are most attracted to people that are younger than them?
Yeah, I don't recall the exact age ranges, but men, it's like peak attractiveness for women is 24 or something.
Yeah.
Based off of, analyzing online dating app
Yeah.
interactions. So he's endorsing a worldview where he doesn't even get hot women. Like, this is the worldview he supports, but per his own logic, Bill Gates gets to form a harem in his basement. This is not an empowering worldview for young men who are trying to get dates. This is a worldview in which men get even fewer opportunities because women are all sucked up by, like, a group of exclusive robber barons who live in New York or whatever.
New York.
We're nearly done, Naomi. Stay with me. Whereas the cold, clinical, economic nature of men and women's relationships may not be sexy, in a beautiful irony, what came from this transaction certainly is. Yes, a man's primary interest in a woman was, no doubt, initially sexual, but if it were the right girl at the right time with the right guy, love would often be the result. A woman might be viewed as evil by insisting a man make a certain amount of money before she commits to him, but in insisting a man of his financial act together, stability would often follow. Financial stability lays a solid foundation to stabilize a relationship and eventually a family. So is she a whore demanding a man make money? Not really. That insistence is hardwired and results in children and a family that brings tremendous joy, arguably the whole purpose of life itself. Were women stingy, prudish, perhaps even arrogant in their choice of men? Are you insulted when a woman rejects you? Indeed, women have lofty, if not impossible, standards. But if it were not for those standards, not a single innovation, advancement, or technology would have been made by men to convince women otherwise. Nearly every innovation or creation, and almost all of society and civilization, would not exist if women did not effectively insist men achieve some level of excellence before having sex with them.
Wait, so you don't require I don't require all of the men that I have sex with to build
perpetual motion machines,
a spaceship and take it to the moon?
Yeah. Okay, so he's saying financial stability, which really only reinforces my whole point about Bill Gates having a harem in his basement.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly seems like he's spurring men to get like lots of money, and this ties into the whole manosphere idea of becoming a small business owner grifter. And I bring this up because it's going to come up in Chapter 4 in a major way. But keep in mind, people like Andrew Tate have forums where you pay absurd amounts of money to hang out with con men who are like, and here's how you can make money. Have your cousin work for you for free and extract labor from them. Behind the Bastards had a multi-part episode on Andrew Tate, and they like dug into some of like the advice Andrew Tate gives, and one of them is like, start a small business and make your young cousin do all the work and pay them $5 because they're stupid and don't understand money. But yeah,
I don't have any young cousin.
When he's talking about financial stability, he's like, men, think about whether or not you have sufficient resources. And that is an attempt to draw men into these pyramid scheme-like structures. They're like, invest in crypto. It can only go up, Naomi. It can only go up. Yes, it went down, but it's going to come back up. It's momentum. That's how the financial markets work. So back to his text, he says the phrase financial act together. He says financial stability. This is different than resources. The original contract was resources and protection, like food and shelter. Naomi, we didn't have money until 5,000 years ago. Money did not exist until 5,000 years ago. There wasn't even an official currency in existence until 600 BCE.
Because we just had bartering systems.
Yeah. So this idea that we're hardwired throughout 200,000 years of human history to gather money is objectively stupid, because money hasn't existed for particularly long. But also, he's saying that the contract is even more complicated because it's not just whether or not you can take care of a family, it's whether or not you have a positive balance in your checking account, right? He keeps adding things onto the old contract, making it more complicated.
Yeah.
I think that's also really important to point out because he's not answering the question, what are women looking for? Are they looking for the trappings of wealth, or are they looking for bank statements? What does their biological imperative tell them to do per him? It seems like it's very, very easy to fake looking like you're wealthy.
It is, especially these days.
So how does a woman rightfully discern whether or not a man is wealthy and pair up with them?
Ooh, how would I do it? Have him buy me all the drinks in the bar. Have him all of these things. Show me your spaceship. Show me your
I mean, keep in mind,
company.
you know, he's endorsing this worldview that comes along with Andrew Tate. It comes along with all these like right-wing douchebags who are all like, you need to get ripped and shredded. You need to have your 50-pack abs in order for women to want to have sex with you. But throughout most of human history, like the people who were the wealthiest were fat.
Yeah.
They were overweight because they didn't have to do manual labor.
Yeah.
They could sit, you know, in their pyramids, penthouse of the pyramids or whatever, and not have to worry about moving giant stone blocks around. It's the people with the fewest resources who actually had the muscle. I'm not saying that's true of everyone, but like if you're going to make this argument that we're biologically hardwired, I'd argue women are biologically hardwired for the dad bod.
Ooh.
Yeah. I'm just saying. But it also goes to his point where he's like, women are biologically impaired to like be attracted to money. How do you detect money? It seems women would very easily fall for fraud.
Yeah.
Right? A guy gets a fake Rolex. What's a woman going to do? Oh, well, the serial number appears to be misprinted. It looks like that minute hand isn't painted with the same type of paint as they use. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how really to unpack it, but I think it's interesting, too, that he portrays all of human civilization and all of progress as designed specifically to have sex with women. All of it. Polio vaccines, getting to space, weaponizing the atom, all of it. Nothing has ever been done because people enjoy solving problems or because people are racist and want to come up with a new way of killing. Yeah, it's crazy how he has shrunk down any sense of purpose for men to the singular item of having sex with women. And I feel, again, in terms of philosophies, this is incredibly dehumanizing. Because young men reading this are now learning that it's never okay to have a passion, a fascination with deep sea exploration or dinosaurs or garbage trucks, right? Everything you do has to be so you can make money and pick up women more efficiently. Right, when you're 80 years old with your harem in the basement.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is not a positive philosophy for young men. Never said it was, but it gets even worse the more you dig. Anyways, according to him, everything good, meaningful, and beautiful in life came from the old contract. Every human advancement, including family, love, technology, history, the arts, civilization, comes from men trading resources for sex, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Per his logic, when you fly to Amsterdam to spend a week in the red light district, you're basically Michelangelo.
The Ninja Turtle?
Yes, the Ninja Turtle. You are basically the nunchuck one? Bow staff one? Okay.
No. Yeah.
But again, he's saying the most important thing in human civilization is men trading resources for sex. Yeah, hiring prostitutes is the same as painting the Mona Lisa.
Michelangelo didn't paint the Mona Lisa.
We're moving on. The analogy's getting more complicated. However, Naomi, whether you're aware of it or not, and whether you like it or not, modern trends have rendered this reasonable want impossible for most men. Worse, these trends have made your strong natural male desires the ropes by which you'll hang yourself. Even worse, these strong desires will damn you to a tortured, wasted life of vainly pursuing this near impossibility. This is how Tom, Dick, and Harry fucked up, and how Harry ruined his life. This is the risk every young man faces today. This does not mean to give up like a pussy. On the contrary, you should not deny your biological nature. You are hardwired to want women, love, sex, and, for most of us, children. To deny your nature damns you to lead a miserable and unfulfilled life, which is what many modern women have foolishly done today. You must strike a balance that allows you to achieve your old contract desires while successfully navigating even new contract realities. This will help you avoid divorce, financial ruin, heartbreak, or even jail?
How does that... What? Has he met the justice system?
For what is real and not what is ideal.
I feel like every single time that you quote him, you should just either do Batman or like commercial Joel.
He's not cool enough to be Batman. He's not prepared enough. He's not as handsome. He's not as wealthy. He's not as kung fu.
Okay, then do your Dick Biggington voice.
It's me, Dick Biggington.
I think you should read it exactly like that. Like you're laying across like a very Grecian like scene, and you're getting fed grapes while you're reading this.
I'm wearing a toga and like it's riding up,
yeah.
So you see far more of my thigh than you want to.
And you have a harem of girls in your basement.
Why has no? Okay, I know a lot of people have embraced like the trad aesthetic. Like you have all these accounts online, which is like I'm the rational male, and their profile picture is like a classic Greek statue or whatever.
Okay.
And they're all about like how we need to embrace Western tradition, you know, like our high school was. and they use this like model of like antiquity in order to like push their point across.
Yeah.
Why have none of these grifters done a thing where they're just like shirtless in a toga, pretending that they're like living the Socratic life?
Ooh.
Right? That or the Spartan mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah. You dress up in like a loincloth and you like talk about the importance of like
loincloths.
Pederasty or whatever the Spartans are known for. Yeah, I don't know. So Naomi, that is the end of the chapter.
Yes.
The old contract. And I have a question for you.
Okay.
We're 3 chapters into
yes.
a 9-chapter book, 8
yes.
chapters if you exclude the one that's just recommending other books.
Yeah.
Have you figured out yet why women deserve less?
Yeah, I have.
Per the author,
yeah.
What is his argument for why women deserve less?
No idea. But I figured that I deserve less because the only thing that I give is sex.
Not even children.
Not even children.
If you
just
want.
sex.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because my vagina is a trapdoor, such as a whale.
I'm thinking more like a Chinese finger trap.
Wait.
Don't think about it.
What?
I would argue that he has not yet articulated his argument for why women deserve less.
Fair.
And he continues to just ramble without building to any greater point.
Yeah.
I'm also really excited for chapter 4, where he's like, let's talk about what the new contract is, and does an even worse job articulating that than he has with this
I
one.
was excited.
Yeah. I would also say that, like, the simplest answer to this problem men face of, like, not being able to get sex because they're poor or whatever, just castrate yourself.
Yeah.
Like, per his logic, if, like, men's obsession with sex consumes their lives and forces them to be destitute, like, get rid of the desire and then you can do something else.
Does
like,
that get rid of your desire, or does that just, like, make sure that you can't act on the desire?
That's an interesting
Like,
point.
on a biological level, wouldn't you just rub your Ken doll area on anything that moves at that point?
Listen, Myron, if you're listening to this, cut your balls off. Let us know what happens. Yeah, I mean, I do want to wrap up.
Yeah.
In this chapter, he's introduced the concept of the old and new contracts, neither of which makes any sense, both of which are poorly explained, and neither of which is supported by either logic or, actual history. It's almost as if his ideology is causing him to just make up bullshit to support his worldview. But who could really say? I think it's also worth, once again, reiterating, this is not a positive ideology for men. And I don't mean that, like, it could be a positive ideology. It's one in which if you follow his advice, you will not become a sex god. You will not become someone who's more attractive to women. You will not become someone who's better at dealing with relationships. You're going to become someone who can't access any women because all the women are attracted to Hugh Hefner and, like, all the other men who have resources in the world.
Hugh Hefner's dead.
But he's also the wealthiest.
Okay.
He can still provide resources and protections even when dead. I think you're ignoring all those like billionaires who leave all their fortunes to their cats or whatever.
What I would do to have one of those cats in my life. Well, folks, wear lots of lube and wear a condom. We love you all. Have a great week.
We have many thanks for the use of our theme music, which is the song Drop by Ketsa. You can find more of their music online at ketsa.uk. You can also find Date These Guys online on Twitter and Instagram at @DateTheseGuys or visit datetheseguys.org. If you have questions for the podcast or want to be a wealthy sugar parent, please send an email to datetheseguys@gmail.com. If you'd like to support our work, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/datetheseguys. We have behind-the-scenes information, early episode access, participation in polls, and exclusive access to a guy sibling map of date ideas for the Arizona area. Since the world sucks right now, we are currently donating all Patreon proceeds to trans organizations like the Trevor Project, a trans suicide prevention organization, and moving assistance funds for those fleeing states outlawing their very existence. Please consider becoming a member and supporting our work today.